He was getting old and paunchy, and his hair was falling fast. And he sat around the Legion telling them stories of the past, of a war that he had fought in, and the deeds that he had done, in his exploits with his buddies. They were heroes, every one. And though sometimes to his neighbors his tales became a joke, all his Legion buddies listened, for they knew whereof he spoke. But we'll hear his tales no longer, for old Bill has passed away. The world's a little poorer, for a soldier died today. He will not be mourned by many, just his children and his wife. For he lived an ordinary and quite uneventful life. He held a job and raised a family, quietly going his own way. And the world won't note his passing. Oh, a soldier died today. When politicians leave this earth, their bodies lie in state, while thousands note their passing and proclaim that they were great. Papers tell their whole life stories from the time that they were young. But the passing of a soldier goes unnoticed and unsung. Is the greatest contribution to the welfare of our land a guy who breaks his promise and cons his fellow man? Or the ordinary fellow who in times of war and strife goes off to serve his country and offers up his life? A politician's stipend and the style in which he lives are sometimes disproportionate to the service that he gives, while the ordinary soldier who has offered up his all is paid off with a medal, perhaps a pension, small. It's so easy to forget them, for it was so long ago that the old bills of our country went to battle. But we know it was not the politicians with their compromises and ploys who won for us the freedom that our country now enjoys. Should you find yourself in danger with your enemies at hand, would you want a politician with his ever-shifting stand? Or would you prefer a soldier who has sworn to defend his home, his kin and country, and would fight until the end? He was just a common soldier, and his ranks are growing thin. But his presence should remind us we may need his like again. For when countries are in conflict, then we find the soldier's part is to clean up all the troubles that the politicians started. If we cannot do him honor while he's here to give the prayers, then at least let's give him homage at the ending of his days. Perhaps just a simple headline in a paper that would say, "Our country is in mourning, for a soldier died today."
Good morning. I hope I can talk after watching that. I just first want to thank Larry Burbank, who sent me that video a few years ago, and he doesn't even remember that he sent it to me. And I was going through my email the other day, and I'm like, wow, we need to show this, because it's just so true. And I hope we remember that as we have this theme today, going through our honoring our guests. So good morning on this brisk fall day, and welcome to Carroll Hospice's Veteran Appreciation Breakfast. I'm Delegate Susan Krebs, and I'm not one of those politicians, and I don't expect any notoriety for that. But more importantly, I'm the chair of Carroll Hospice and at the board of directors. And hopefully this very powerful video will put us in a mindful manner of why we're here and who our true heroes are today. And it's so important that we remember that in this day and age. And you are the ones that gave us our freedoms that we enjoy today. There are many familiar faces here this morning, have been here other years. If this is your first year, raise your hand. Thank you all so much for coming. I want to bring greetings from our executive director. Usually she's the one that starts off this program, Reggie Bodner. She could not be here today. She's on a much needed vacation in Mexico, and we wish her well. She missed the Ravens game the other night, and that was a good one, a bad one to miss. Also, Kim Benson is here with us today. Kim is our volunteer coordinator. She's in the back, and we're so pleased to have her with us today. She's keep her in our prayers. Kim's significant other is at the hospital undergoing some much-needed surgery, and she made time to come up here for us today. And we all know that she's the backbone of our organization when it comes to volunteers. And Kim planned and executed this event, so if anything goes wrong, blame her. No, she's done an excellent job considering she's been at the hospital all week. And we also have some board members with us today. Like anybody that's been on the hospital board, the foundation board, or the hospice board, to please stand. Don't be shy, because I'm going to call you out if you don't make it. Thank you. Ann Bollinger is our vice chair of Carroll Hospice, so she'll be in front of you next year here. Wayne Barnes was here. He's coming back down. He's our former chair of Carroll Hospice. I don't want to miss anybody, so I'm not going to name any more names. I'm really honored to be speaking with you here today on such an important occasion. I often remark that November is my favorite month. And I'm not nervous. It's an emotional time. We start the month off with elections. And they're passed. We didn't have them in Maryland this year, thank goodness, because last year we were just finished our election. But we had elections in many states yesterday or Tuesday. And you start off with this contentious elections at the beginning of the month, and it's always not fun, but we always have it's not always stress-free, but we always have a peaceful transition of power in this nation, whether if it's our state elections, our local elections, or our national elections. And then we move right into Veterans Day, or Veterans Week, as I call it here in Carroll County, and I'm very, very proud of that. And we take this time in Carroll County and all across our country to make sure we remember the sacrifices that have been made and the courage that it took and still takes to defend our country. And yesterday, we started off the week by having a wonderful presentation at Century High School. That our schools do such a phenomenal job of honoring our veterans. If you haven't taken advantage of it, I sat there yesterday with Colonel Rothstein, and literally I cried the whole time looking at 1,200 students sitting in a gymnasium with a room full of veterans, and for 45 minutes you could hear a pin drop. Total attentiveness of our students and our veterans and the program, and that's what we need. We need to make sure our youth understand the sacrifices of our veterans. And I was so proud. So I appreciate that you're all here today, but make sure you get out there and let the rest of our community know who you are and be proud of that. You are really, truly our heroes, and we've made our armed forces the most respected in the world. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge and recognize the family members of our veterans who have sacrificed so much to support their mothers, their fathers, their brothers, their sisters, their sons, and their daughters while they served. And some of them, those folks did not come home. And we are so truly grateful for their sacrifice as well. And for those of you who are here with us today, we appreciate that. As I said before, it's so important in this day and age that our youth understand, respect, and value the military that protects our great nation. Less than 1% of people wear the uniform anymore, and I think sometimes we've got to remind them that the freedoms that we enjoy today are because of the sacrifices of our veterans. And I'm just I'm so proud of what we do here in Carroll County to honor our veterans. Please seek out and take time to go to some of these other programs. There's a bunch of them next week. I sent out an email blast the other day listing them all, and make yourself familiar. It's important that our kids learn about you, not just from in a textbook, but they realize that you're their relative, their neighbors, their coworkers, and you're there. So I'd like to take a moment and ask you all to stand up. Any veterans, please stand up. And thank you so much. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for your service. We're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance by Gary Saylor. Gary, where are you?
I'm back here.
Okay, Gary's going to start us with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we're going to follow with Dorothea. Dorothea, where are you? Dorothea, make your way up here because we're going to follow right after the pledge. Dorothea James is our Army veteran and Carroll Hospice's chaplain and clinical lead. She's going to follow up with a special presentation, and then we're going to have the blessing offered by our other chaplain, Art Monroe, and then we're going to be dismissed by tables for breakfast, and if anyone needs assistance for breakfast, please raise your hand and someone will help you, and then we'll start our program after breakfast. So we'll go from one thing to the next. Everyone else can stand and join Gary in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Uncover. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Delegate Krebs. We appreciate the opportunity to stand here. As she already mentioned, before I was Chaplain Dorothea, before I was Dr. Dorothea, I was Sergeant Dorothea, and then I was in the Maryland Defense Force as well as a chaplain, and so I'm so honored to stand here. The missing man table in which you see before you is what we do to represent and to remember our fallen comrades. It's a place of honor at military dining facilities, and we place it here today. It's in memory of the fallen and missing military service members. The table serves as a focal point of remembrance originally growing out of the U.S. concern at the Vietnam War. This table, I believe, is square, but often it's round to remind us of the everlasting concern we never forget about our missing soldiers. And so we will list the items at the table. It is set for one because it symbolizes the frailty of the isolated prisoner. The tablecloth is white, symbolic of the purity of their intentions to respond to the country's call to arms. There's a single rose in a vase that signifies the blood that many shed in sacrifice to ensure the freedom of our beloved United States of America. A ribbon is tied to represent the love of our country, which inspired them to answer the nation's call. A slice of lemon on a bread plate signifies the bitter fate that the prisoner falls to in capture. And the pinch of salt, the tears of the family members who are left behind. The lifted, inverted chalice, it must be a cup or a chalice there, that represents the missing and the fallen that cannot partake. The Bible that represents the spiritual strength and faith to sustain those lost for our country. We light a candle in remnants of the hope which leaves our heart to illuminate their way home, away from their captors to the open arms of the grateful nation, and the empty chair that represents the missing and fallen who are not here. May God continue to bless this country. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. As I am a creature of habit, and I wanted to remind myself of this very special event this morning, I had a note written on my calendar, which is in the kitchen of my home, and my daughter noticed it this morning. And she asked me what it was about. And I told her that we were going to be honoring our veterans this morning. And my 13-year-old daughter said, make sure they know that I appreciate what they did. We will bow our heads for the blessing, and we will start the blessing with a moment of silence to allow ourselves the opportunity to reflect on those who gave their lives and who also went missing in action. So let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear Lord, today we honor our veterans, worthy men and women who gave their best when they were called upon to serve and protect their country. We pray that you will bless them, Lord, for their unselfish service in the continual struggle to serve our freedoms, our safety, and our country's heritage for all of us. Bless them abundantly for the hardships they faced, for the sacrifices they made, for their many different contributions to America's victories over tyranny and oppression. We respect them, we thank them, we honor them, we are proud of them, and we pray that you will watch over these special people and bless them with peace and happiness. In thy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We're now going to be picking tables. Who's doing that? Dismissing tables so we can go to breakfast. See if you're the lucky one. I know everybody's full. Please, I hope you don't fall asleep. But thank you. I hope you all had a hearty breakfast. They ran out of bacon, but then they got more bacon. So if you need some, there's some out there. Please, we need to thank our sponsors for breakfast, because this breakfast came from Coons Toyota. And we are pleased to have both of our sponsors here today with us. Our new chairman, executive director, I don't know, what do you call it?
General manager.
General manager, that's right. At Coons is Vitaly Gurevich, up here with us at the head table, and Jeremy Vocal is the finance manager there. Please frequent our businesses that support our veterans. And I will tell you, Coons is very special to me. Mr. Coons is a huge supporter all over of all of his branches of veterans. My son-in-law works for Coons in Sterling, and he hires veterans. When they get out of the service, don't have a job, you got a job. And it gets you a start. So we thank Coons. We appreciate what they do locally and throughout the entire organization. Also, Jeannie Bird Baking Company and Metz Culinary provided some of the more fattening food, and we thank them because it's really good. So thank you, and thank you to all the volunteers out there this morning. We're going to have a video presentation by Sherry Taylor with the Community Media Center.
Thank you so much for having us here today, and this is just such a wonderful event, and I echo that. Thank you to Coons Toyota for supporting this every year. Wanted to tell you briefly a little bit about a project that the Community Media Center is doing, and that's our Veterans Oral History Project. For the past several years, the Community Media Center has held Veterans Oral History Collection Days, and we invite veterans to come and share their story. And we have probably 80, 85 local veterans who have done that. And this project has really become a labor of love for us. And the cool part for me personally is I get to see a lot of the veterans that we interviewed in previous years come back and actually interview their fellow service members. So that is really spectacular. And a number of those folks are here. I want to thank Larry Burbank, who has just been a major champion for this project, and Larry comes to me every year with a list of names and says, you got to call these guys because we need their story. Gary Saylor, Bill Murphy, not here, I don't believe, Gary Livingood, Elaine May Stem. Hi. Adrian Gamboa and Bill Palm, who is also a vet volunteer here at Hospice. All of these folks have been helpful in recording these interviews and also recruiting folks to share their story, and you'll hear a little bit more from Bill in the future. But what we're going to be doing on Monday, on November 11th, is we will be broadcasting all day, starting at 9 o'clock on Channel 19 and on HD 1086. We're broadcasting interviews with local veterans. And just wanted to give you a quick peek at some of the stories that you'll be seeing.
There's just something about being in a hole or being on a ship or being in a helicopter or being in a plane with a group of men and women in a combat or in a stress environment. You know you have to depend on each other.
We get sniped at. We got like 6 trucks going.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you'd hear a rifle shot, they'd say, get down. There wasn't, other than the side of the truck, there wasn't anything protected.
My weapon then was a 50 caliber machine gun that was like partially dug in, not real deep. But it was deep enough for me to get in there, in that hole, and crawl into my helmet as far as I could go.
You're kind of a target, weren't you?
And my buttons were in the way, I couldn't get low enough.
In Afghanistan, we weren't really fighting a uniformed military, we were fighting an insurgency, and then in Iraq we came in and fought an actual army. And a uniform, we know who we're fighting because they're wearing uniforms like we are. And
I lost a couple of real good young men that I was with that worked with me at the water point where we were purifying water.
So I'm standing back there and I'm watching these people come out in small boats and whatnot and get on the garbage board and shoot each other over our garbage.
It's interesting, during World War II, they used to put the German or Japanese flags on the side of their vehicle, on the side of their airplane or their ship, the ones they knocked out. These cutters would come in with marijuana and pictures on the side.
My transition from military to the civilian was like walking through that door. Okay. I was just a regular person. But the Vietnam vets, they came back, they got booed, they got spit on, they got rocks thrown at them. They came back to a country that they fought for, supported, and loved, but they didn't get the same support and respect that I did.
But because I came in at the end of the Vietnam era, I had a first-hand look at how our men and women who served in Vietnam were treated in this country. And it still breaks my heart to this day to see the anguish.
Well, first and foremost, appreciate what we have here in the United States. Our freedom, you don't have to worry about what we say to each other or friends, which in many places that I've been in the world, you've got to be very guarded on what you say and when. The camaraderie with the fellow Marines, I mean, I don't know about the Army and Navy, but the Marines say once a Marine, always a Marine, so I'm still a Marine.
It's the hardest job that anybody could do.
That camaraderie that developed back in the 60s stayed with myself as well as many of my fellow Marines for a long time.
On November 11th, tune in to HD 1086 or Channel 19 for a special Veterans Day broadcast. Starting at 9 a.m., the Community Media Center will feature interviews with local veterans. If you or someone you know would like to share their story, contact us at 410-386-4415. Special thanks to Terry's Tag and Title, Mercer Floor and Home Carpet One, and to Quantum Internet and Telephone for their generous support of this Veterans Oral History broadcast. The purpose of what we're doing here is to preserve those stories, to recognize our veterans, and in the video that we saw earlier at the beginning of the presentation that said their story won't be told. We're trying to preserve that so that their story is told, so that your story is told. And for future generations, I know Delegate Krebs talked about the schools and the students. All these interviews are online at carrollhistory.org, so people can look at them, they can watch them, the kids can use them for research, and it really does bring history to life. It puts a face on experiences and the things that shaped our country and our nation, and we're pleased to be part of that. And the final piece of this is it's helpful to the veterans as well. A few years ago we had, I was contacted by the son of one of the veterans that we interviewed, and his father, who had been a Vietnam veteran, struggled to last several months of his life with a number of illnesses, some diagnoses, and lots of red tape, and understandably depressed and disillusioned and feeling rather defeated. And he wrote, "I thought you might like to know how proud you made him to be allowed to tell his stories to you. It seemed to have restored his faith in his country, knowing that someone cared enough to ask him about his experiences and life after Vietnam." And that's really why we do this, because what you do affects all of us. And we've been privileged to meet a lot of veterans. We've lost a number of them, and you're going to hear from Bill Palm later, who has been a tremendous help in helping us capture more of those. So I would hope that you tune in on November 11th, because Veterans Day is not the only day we should remember our veterans. The Media Center will also be continuing to air veterans interviews every week through the end of the year. So tune in to Channel 19 or HD 1086 and hear their stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry, and thank you for what the Community Media Center is doing. It is so, as we said, it is so important to share these stories and to keep them forever. It's now time for our keynote speaker, and I get the privilege of introducing him. Retired Colonel Ed Rothstein has led a very diverse career during his 31 years with the military, including numerous deployments that include Kosovo, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Colonel Rothstein earned a master's degree from Eisenhower School for National Security and Resource Strategy and worked with the National Security Agency, among other assignments from tactical to strategic. The culmination of his military career was his service as the installation commander of Fort Meade, Maryland. In 2014, Ed retired from the military and worked as the economic developer for Anne Arundel County before founding ERA Advisory, LLC, that focuses on opportunities for businesses and government, along with helping businesses meet their goals and objectives. 1 year ago, civilian Ed Rothstein was elected to the Carroll County Board of Commissioners in District 5, serving the Eldersburg and Sykesville communities. Ed has immersed himself in many important issues in our county, but very importantly, he's been a huge advocate for the veteran community. I would also mention that Ed lived in Carroll County while he did his service at Fort Meade, and his family, we talk about family, and he has 2 kids. He's been married to Audrey for 25 years and has 2 grown children, Emily and Sam, which he is very proud of, and he could talk about them forever, and they're very successful young people. But he brought his family to Carroll County as he was serving in Fort Meade, and our community here in Carroll County embraced his wife, who raised his children. He's taking credit for them now, but we are so pleased that they found their home in Carroll County. But most important for Ed, he's not only just an advocate and a veteran and a county commissioner, but he and Audrey are both also my friend. And I thank you very much, Ed.
Well, good morning, and I'll tell you, it's a challenge to follow all the things that have been said, whether it's the videos, the comments from Delegate Krebs, the sidebar conversations we've been having this morning. It's really an honor. I'm very humbled to be here with you this morning. I do have some prepared remarks. Those that know me, I sometimes use them, I sometimes kind of go off them. It was asked earlier why we come to Carroll County. You know how I feel about Carroll County, or if you don't, I'll say it real simple. It rocks. Carroll County is just amazing. When we PCS'd from Colorado about 12 years ago, a little over 12 years ago, Audrey gave me a list of things she wanted for a home. I had a list of things I wanted for a home. I came out on a Friday. I looked on Saturday, I selected on Sunday, and I bought on Monday. We're still married, so life's good. I mean, and I'll tell you, it was because of the neighborhood. It was because of the kids on the street. It was because of our neighbors, you know, to the right and left of us. We just felt, or I felt, that this was going to be home. And it certainly has been. And it definitely did not let me down. I'd like to also thank Kim in the back and also our thoughts and prayers for a healthy recovery for your husband. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. You know, when we do the pledge, I always stand straight, I always stand chest out. But when I'm around you as veterans, I don't know, I just get this stronger feeling. And I feel like I'm just stepping up another inch taller. And the chest is just going out a little bit stronger with the chin high. And saying the pledge, saying word for word, just means so much. And that's also what we found yesterday at Century High School. It was incredible watching these young boys and girls, 14 to 18 years old, with their hand over their heart, and they were standing straight and saying the pledge. It was one of the most impactful memories that I'm going to have for a long, long time. You know, we're here to honor our service members, our veterans. It is not a solemn occasion. There's challenges that we have when we do see our brothers in arms and sisters in arms pay the ultimate sacrifice. Memorial Day is set aside for just that. This is an opportunity to be uplifted and to thank those veterans and thank those service members, and also, in the same time, really show appreciation for those that did give the ultimate sacrifice. But it's not necessarily a solemn, sad event. It is a real uplifting. It should be uplifting. There's a few things I want you to take away from what I'm going to share with you this morning. And it's not necessarily the words, but it's how I want you to feel at the end of this few minutes I'm going to be talking. Because I don't expect people to remember the words, but if somebody has an impact, you should be walking away with, how did you feel from what was said? There was a writer, a philosopher, a French guy named Michel de Montaigne, who once said, valor is stability, not of the legs and the arms, but of courage and of the soul. We're here today to honor you and honor our veterans and the families, remembering the achievements and the courage and the dedication, to say thank you for the sacrifice that you spent away from home. Thinking of the heroes who join us at this group today, and those who are here only in spirit, a person can't help but feel awed by the enormity of what we encountered. We stand amid patriots, whether we call ourselves patriots or not, and most of us don't. Most of us who have served, and I would say all of us that have served, don't see ourselves as patriots, don't see ourselves of courageous, of honor and respect, of that leadership qualities. Those around us may, and they may say thank you, and you're saying, I just did my job. And that's in many cases the way we felt. But it is an opportunity to recognize those traits, those values, the loyalty, the honor, the duty, respect, the personal courage, the selfless sacrifices that we've made. That's what Veterans Day is about. At this time, what I'd like to do is see our veterans. I know we all stood up before, but I do want you to stretch your legs so you don't fall asleep on me. And first, I want to see our veterans that have served actually in the last 40 years. Can you believe it? From 1980 to today. The global war on terrorism, Panama, Kosovo, the Balkans, Afghanistan, Iraq. Those veterans in here from 1980 forward. Desert Storm, Steve. Okay, now sit down. Y'all can sit pretty quick. Okay, our Vietnam veterans, those that were not thanked, that was mentioned in the video. Welcome home to all our Vietnam veterans. If you have not been pinned as of today, please let's find a time where we can help recognize you by shaking your hand, looking you in the eyes and saying welcome home and give you a pin. So all our Vietnam veterans, please stand. Thank you. Okay, sit down. You're still not that old. Okay, those that can and will are Korean War veterans. Now, the Korean War veterans is a time of a war that they say has been forgotten. It was never a war just like Vietnam. It was a conflict. My dad served in Korea. He's 88 years old, standing strong still, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about him. But the challenge with my dad when I joined the Army in 1983 was he didn't talk about it. I was like, what did you do? I just went over to Korea. I'm like, come on, man, you did more than just go over to Korea. Talk me through it. It took many years as we started talking from soldier to soldier and sharing what was going on in Korea. It was a horrible conflict from 51 to 53. And, again, it was one of those that they said was forgotten, and it should never be forgotten. So those Korean War veterans, if you can, please stand and be recognized. Thank you. Now sit down a little bit gingerly, because you know you're getting up there, but that's okay. World War II veterans, the greatest generation that has been said. They came to serve during a horrific time. We thought that World War I was going to be the war to end all wars. Armistice Day, the beginning of Veterans Day, started on the 11th hour, the 11th day, the 11th month, Armistice Day, from World War I. We were wrong. It took a while for us to recognize, do not just honor those from one armistice, but recognize veterans for all the wars. Our World War II veterans, if you're in the room and you can, please stand. Thank you so much. And I'll share with you, a couple of thoughts about the greatest generation. And there's been a lot of things written about the greatest generation. I do believe our World War II generation, our communities, are our greatest generations. But I also think that what happened on 9/11, those horrific acts, those that have served from 9/11 forward because of that has turned into a greatest generation. It was kind of a skip generation from World War II all the way to there. But those young men and women that I've served with in Iraq and Afghanistan have showed a selfless service and a personal courage that had not been seen in quite some time. So it really does come around. And I saw also that mentorship and that development from past generations to what was happening then. But we should never forget our World War II veterans. So thank you, sir, for being here. Thank you also for all of us for answering the call of duty. You have made our military the most respected in the world. Now what I want to do is add a couple of thoughts as I reflect on Veterans Day. You know, we live in an awesome country. We live in a wonderful state. Our governor has said that this is the year of the veteran, and we live in an amazing county in Carroll County. Because of the freedoms, because of the things that are provided to us. It is said, and I think Delegate Krebs shared, 1 to 2% of our men and women decide to put that uniform on and take away some of their rights, and we're going to talk about that in a second, to provide us with the freedoms of assembly, for freedoms and opportunities that we have this morning. And what I want to share with you in that 31-year career of mine, a couple of activities that occurred. You know, we say we have mentors, and when we talk about mentorship, we look at our elders, my dad, my mom, teachers, the clergy. Mentorship comes in all shapes and all sizes and all generations. And back in, I think it was the late 80s, I was a lieutenant, I think first lieutenant, and I was flying from East Coast to West Coast. And it was interesting configuration on the plane because the seats were facing each other by the bulkhead. So there was 2 seats and 2 seats, which was interesting. So me being the shy type guy I am, which I'm not, I pick up conversations, and we're talking amongst us, the 4 of us. I remember there was a young lady, a young gentleman, and I think a professor in Maryland. And we're talking about our careers and what we do. And I said how I was in the Army, and I was going to, I think it was my transition course, where I was going into military intelligence down at Fort Huachuca. And this gentleman, this young boy, was so appreciative and said, "Thank you so much for everything you're doing." And I was like, "Well, you're welcome, but why are you so, passionate about this?" He was a law student. I think he was a first-year law student at Arizona State. And these are the things that I remember. It's very interesting that I would think, why am I reflecting on a one-year law student at Arizona State from 30-some-odd years ago, or whatever it is? And what he shared with me was, "I'm so passionate because you are giving up certain inalienable rights to allow me to have mine." I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And he never thought of it that way. And then we started talking, and I absolutely agreed with him. When I raised my right hand without any purpose of evasion, without any, with this selflessness that I had, not knowing that I was being so selfless, I was giving up certain inalienable rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. Religion was, I don't want to say curtailed, but challenged on deployments, whether it was in the Balkans or Iraq or Afghanistan, things that I felt that I should be able to do, I had to put to the side because we had to act. Well, I wasn't open and allowed to just speak up and give my opinions, because that was wrong. It was against the UCMJ. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool that this young, law student recognized that in me, a young officer, and the rest of the military. But he was absolutely right. And that's one of the things I really want to share with you, to thanking our service members, that they willfully raise their right hand and say that they will give up certain inalienable rights without saying that in their oath, but that's what they're doing, to allow us to have ours. That's pretty powerful. And let that resonate with you. Like I said, the mentorships come from all different places. My dad's pretty cool. Like I said, he was a Korean War. I had him speak on Fort Meade as a keynote. He's like, "Why the heck do you want me to speak? I was a private, I was a mortarman in the Korean War." I said, "Because you got a story to tell." And he did. And what he shared with us and the group in front of us was the parades that he used to attend during Armistice Day back then. And he said the soldiers and service members, whether they were in the trucks or able to march, he saw their chests rise high or raise up and their heads high. And that meant a lot because it was recognition for our service members. I get mentorship also from my wife, Audrey, every day. I may be the eagle, but she's got the stars, and we all know that. I get it from my kids, Emily and Sam. They're amazing, and I am, as Delegate Krebs shared, so proud of them. You never know where you're going to get mentorship from. The takeaway from that is take the blinders off and allow the information to come in. Because I never would have had that if I had those blinders. And then talking to that young gentleman from Arizona State, again, back in the 1980s. The second point I just want to share with you is the power of our community. That 1 to 2%. The Chief of Staff of the Army a few years back shared that the strength of our nation comes from that 1 to 2% that wear the uniform. I'm like, cool, I agree with you. He said the strength of those men and women wearing the uniform are the families. I was like, you know, he's right. I've been deployed many times. Back in the day when there was no telephone, there was no email, it was the handwritten letters, okay? And then we moved from one to the other. And I recognized that it really was the family. I mean, what Audrey had to put up with, besides me being a kid, but me being gone and our kids, it was pretty powerful. So what I'd like to do is take a moment, and all those family members that are in the room of our service members, please stand and be recognized. Wives, children, spouses, get up. You can stand. You're powerful. Thank you. Okay, now sit down. You are powerful. You're strong. You're courageous. You didn't sign up for it. We're the ones that took that oath. You came along with us. And it's pretty powerful, the things you did. I like to take it a step further from where the Chief of Staff, and I like to take liberties now that I'm a civilian, I can do these things. The strength of the service member, that 1% to 2%, is the strength of those families. But as I mentioned, when I came to Carroll County and into Eldersburg, I recognized the neighbors and the community. Those first couple of years, I was over at the agency, and I was in Iraq a lot. I was going back and forth into Iraq. Those neighbors never let me, I was unexpected. I'm like, you know, we're not living in a military community. We came from Fort Carson on post. So when I went to Iraq, everybody knew, hey, he's going to Iraq, take care of the family, mow the lawn, whatever it needs to be done, because that's what we did. But in Eldersburg and Carroll County, I definitely wasn't expecting it. But what we saw in return was a community wrapping their arms around Audrey and the kids, the local church, the neighbors. It was amazing. And then, fast forward a few years, I was in Afghanistan for a year, and it almost doubled and tripled in size, how they really took care of the kids and of Audrey. Sam was in middle school, Emily was in high school. It was a tough time. It was a tough time to be a kid. Everybody who remembers middle school, it's pretty tough. And the school embraced them. Century High School and all the schools in Carroll County are amazing how they're growing to embrace the children of our veterans at large. So the strength really does, Don, comes from that service man and woman in uniform. But it goes much further. It goes to the families. It goes to the community. And an opportunity to see more of that. If any of you have been to the airport, BWI Airport, the honor flights that come in, Vietnam, Korean War, World War II veterans coming in and having the opportunity to go down to D.C., that's an opportunity to see the real community. So take the opportunity, and it's pretty cool when they come off the plane or when they're boarding the plane. You get to shake their hands and just be there with them. It is a pretty powerful feeling. I remember walking, and I saw it, and I said, wait, I'm going to stop. And I shook every one of their hands, and it was pretty powerful. That's what community is about. Carroll County, as I mentioned, is just remarkable. I've served on the Veterans Council while I was in uniform. Now I'm an ex officio on that council. The things we do, it's not about the monuments. It's not about the name recognition of our veterans. We don't do things for that. It's about service. Our selfless service as veterans is now given to the community, and their service now back to the veterans. The transportation services, you know, Bill, with the work that you've done with the nonprofit, the good ideas. That's what the Veterans Council and Larry as well. The good ideas that come from the community resonate, you know, with the VVIP and Ed. I mean, that's where we make things happen. And I really do applaud, and that's what Carroll County is. No other community, I feel, is doing that in the state. I've been told by our secretary, Owings, that we are a model in the state. I believe we're a model in the state and a model in the country on how we take care of our veterans. We can do more, absolutely. Come up with those good ideas, and let's make a lot of things happen. That's what Veterans Day is all about to me. It's that service. It's that opportunity to give. It's the recognition of the strength of the uniform and the community that wraps their arms around it. let's see where my notes are since I never read these notes. Blah, 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 blah. We honor today. We come from all walks of life, whether you're the older generation or let's say the more mature generation of World War II, sir, or folks like us from the younger generations, although I don't feel that young. We have certain attributes, we have certain values that are a common thread. In the Army, we have an acronym, and the Major talked about it yesterday as well. It's an acronym of leadership, and it's loyalty and duty. It's that respect. It's the integrity, whether doing something right, whether people are watching or not. It's the honor. It's the selfless service, and it's the personal courage. That has been kind of brought into me, but I recognize that it is every generation. When I'm talking to my dad about things, I see those same values. And that's what we see in each other. So it's an opportunity to talk, because what was brought up earlier is we need to have that opportunity to let it out and reach out. There's been stigmas that have been put on us. We don't want to cower in the corner and talk about PTSD. We don't think that we should have certain challenges. Well, the fact is, we do. And as it was shared with me, after 30 years and all the things I've done, if I don't have a problem, something's wrong with me. So it's recognizing that. And a lot of times the opportunities happen when we talk to each other, help somebody, see something, say something, do something. That's what it's all about. Blah, 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 blah. We did that, did that. I just want to say in closing, I like that. I never use my notes. I want to go back to where I started from a few minutes ago. It really is an honor, and I really am humbled. I said it at the high school when I'm standing in front of the kids. I say it to you. Anytime we have an opportunity to say thank you, back out. We should never give up that opportunity to say thank you. That's what Veterans Day to me is all about. It's an opportunity for me to stand here and say thank you. It's an opportunity to say quietly to the man and woman who has served, the family that has wrapped their arms around their loved one in challenging times, recognizing the community. So when anytime somebody says thank you to me, I'm like, hey man, thanks to you because you have really allowed me to do the things I want to do. That's what Veterans Day is all about, is saying thank you. In closing, as always, I just want to say, again, no, not closing yet. One more step. Thanks to the hospice. I forgot about that. Carroll County Hospice, you guys rock, the volunteers. The house we bought, Audrey and I, was from Neil and Sharon Forthman in Eldersburg. If any of you knew Neil and know Sharon. Neil passed. He was in the Air Force. It's okay. I still like him anyway. No, Neil's awesome. But when Neil was passing, the volunteers of the hospice wrapped their arms around him and gave him the respect and the dignity that he deserved as a service member, as an airman, until his last breath. That is something that, I will cherish, knowing that that was done. The gratitude that I have to the hospice is, beyond approach. It's fantastic, and I can't thank you enough for all that you're doing. It's pretty special. Again, it's a testament to Carroll County. And now in closing, just very simply, once again, God bless all of us here in Carroll County, our great state of Maryland, our military, and the United States of America. Thank you.
I want to thank Ed so much for coming. We are so pleased to have him transition from military life to civilian life and then to public life and elected life. And you're not one of those we talked about. You're going to be in the good group on that common man. You'll be remembered both ways. I want to also recognize our World War II veteran. We've been doing this program, I've been doing it for years, and every year we have less and less World War II veterans. But you will never be forgotten, and our Vietnam veterans, we're here to thank you as well. My husband and I, 2 weeks ago, tomorrow, 2 weeks ago, we were at Pearl Harbor, and unbelievable. I mean, we hear about it, we read about it, and a few years ago, we were at Normandy Beaches, and it is just, I'm in awe. I mean, I've never been on a battleship, never been in a submarine, but now I have, and I've seen where you work and where you live. And forget war, but just the living and what you have to go through just to be in the military. I don't know how people do it. And I do not think that our youth, I need to appreciate it even more. I've had much better appreciation. But, you know, none of you asked to go to these distant battlefields. Many of you didn't volunteer. But many went because they loved their country, and you were called to be part of something bigger than yourselves. And you were ordinary people, common men, that responded in extraordinary ways in extreme times. And you all rose to the nation's call, whether it was voluntary or involuntary, involuntold I call it, because you wanted to protect a nation that we love and appreciate. And that's something that we need to make sure that our youth really do appreciate, the freedoms that we have here in this country. I wanted to talk a little bit about the programs here we have at hospice. I mean, this is Veterans Day, but we're here for hospice. And I am so proud of what we do here at Carroll Hospice for our veterans. And we have a program called We Honor Veterans. And there's actually an official program through the National Hospice Care Organization in collaboration with the Department of Veterans Affairs, promoting the needs of veterans and recognition for their service while under hospice care. The program is aimed at strengthening the relationship between community hospice agencies and VA facilities to improve veterans' access to hospice and palliative care, to ensure excellent care at the end of life, and that it's available for our nation's veterans and their families. It is designated for all branches and honors all who served. And for some veterans, it may be the first time they've been properly thanked for their service. For others, it may provide a sense of closure and ease their final journey. But at the We Honor Veterans program, they're visited by a hospice volunteer, and there's certain things that we do during every visit. And we're going to have some of our volunteers speak to some of their experiences. But I'm very proud that our current Carroll Hospice, we have our program, we're a level 4, which is the highest you could be of what we offer. And there's now a new designation, and we're striving for level 5. And I'll explain what exactly that means. Right now, what we do, we have a visit from one of our volunteers, and we provide a certificate to the veteran. We give them a pin, we give them a small flag, a salute, and we give them a service pin based on their branch that they served in. Kim Benson, who is our coordinator of volunteers, oversees the program and educates the staff and the community about the needs of the veterans and making sure that they recognize their contributions. But we need military veterans to visit with and honor our veteran patients for their service. So if you're interested in participating, hopefully we'd love to recruit some of you to be part of this program. We're also interested in getting out in front of different community organizations and presenting the program and discussing it with different organizations. So if you're affiliated with an organization, our Lions Club has had Kim out, or Reggie out to speak about hospice and the veterans program. She'd be happy to come out and talk about partnering with these organizations to benefit our veterans. For example, they come out and talk about advanced planning, available resources and care options to educate our community about veterans benefits and issues. Financially, this program is supported by the contributions that we get in from our very generous community. We get lots of contributions, and they go for programs like this, like the pins. That's not in the budget, to buy pins or buy flags or these nice I call them nice to do initiatives. So that's what we do with the extra money that we raise, some of it through hospice. I put a note here. Oh, one of the things we want to do in the future, and we're going to raise some funds to do this, we want to place flags outside of every room, which will be able to be taken home, large flags, so that we can honor our veterans while they're there. So if you know of anyone, any groups that are interested in this or in having someone out to talk, please contact Kim or myself. But what I wanted to do today is let you hear directly from our volunteers. And we could not do our program without our dedicated volunteers, and I can't thank them enough. They are here for everything. You see them everywhere. And I think they get something out of this as well. But I'm going to call our volunteers up, and all of them together, and they're each going to speak, introduce themselves, what they did. They're all veterans. And then they're going to go one after the other. We have Bill Palm, Gary Saylor, Tom Rio, and Allison Malakowski. And I want to mention that Bill, Gary, and Tom are Army veterans, and Allison's a Marine veteran, and Allison is also a Gold Star mother. And we thank all of them for what they've done for our program.
Okay, I am Bill Palm, as Susan mentioned, and I served in the Army 1966 to 68. I was with the 9th Infantry Division, which was serving down in the Delta, 1967, 68. And just wanted to mention that my wife and I just came back from a cruise, and then the last night of the cruise, there was an opportunity for veterans to get together and meet. So I started chatting with the guy next to me, and yeah, he was serving in 1967, 68. He was Army Security Agency down in the Delta at Dong Tam, which is my home at the time. And during the Tet Offensive of 1968, yeah, I was there. Ouch. And so he started talking about incoming mortar fire, and I started talking about 2 weeks with virtually no sleep and a lot of bad things happening. And interesting, the coincidence, you know, that this business of being a veteran, of just being with the military, it's a small world. And it's not hard to find at least a starting point. If you're a veteran, you took the oath, as mentioned. You had a basic training experience of some sort. You learned that whatever your priorities or interests were, there were the needs of the service, and that came first. Yes, and I have my notes too, to just try to keep me from getting too far off track. You realize that your wardrobe really is not something that you contemplate in the morning. There is a locker next to your bunk, in which is the uniform of the day, which someone has determined for you. That's, okay, so that's what we all share, indeed. I also should speak a little bit, I think, about being a hospice volunteer. Generally speaking, the first question or first comment I get is, gee, that must be tough. And not really, not really. It's a matter of where you focus. Last time I wandered through a cemetery, in fact, there were 2 dates on every stone. And I think there's something satisfying in providing support and comfort and respect to people as they enter that final date. Very much so. I've been volunteering with hospice for approaching 10 years. And early on, the first guy I visited at home was a Canadian World War II pilot. And you realize, of course, there's not that much difference between a Canadian pilot and the U.S. pilot. And so beginning to have a sense that, you know, the veterans are indeed a substantial portion of the people that we serve. And at that point, World War II, there were, well, anybody around age 90 or above, male, was a World War II vet, very few exceptions. I was visiting with a gentleman who served essentially as a stevedore in the Navy. in the Pacific. And those were the days when if you were black, you did not serve in combat. You were pretty well barred. And I was thinking, gee, you know, some opportunity to recognize the service would have really been appropriate. And a little bit after that, another year later, this program that Susan was talking about emerged. And I think over the past 8 years, I've seen kind of on average about 1 patient a week. Sound about right? So over 8 years, that's a bunch. I have, with the World War II veterans, visited North Africa, Sicily, in the memory, Italy. I've talked with veterans from Normandy beaches or the Battle of the Bulge. We present to each one, as Susan mentioned, a certificate, and I wish I had a copy of it with me right now. That just conveys very nicely a sense of gratitude and appreciation for the service they provided. And then we give them a pin. And then a second pin recognizing the branch of service. And that one usually resonates well. Certain sense of respect and interest in your own branch. Not very many World War II veterans anymore. We've moved on. Korean veterans. And now we're starting to see Vietnam veterans as patients. And I've seen a couple who are contending with Agent Orange associated conditions. And so we kind of sit there and reminisce about seeing those aircraft with yellow clouds behind them spreading the stuff. And we were assured, of course, that it was safe. One of the veterans I think worth noting was Bob Krebs. Genuinely nice guy. Well, one of the things about hospice is just genuinely nice people. Particularly Kim, who was, you know, good friend, and then what's reassuring is she's everybody's good friend. And she's sort of our den mother. But one thing about my conversation with Bob is it led to an opportunity to bring in another resource, which is the Community Media Center. And Bob sat for an interview, and we discussed for about a half hour the usual military experience stuff, and then another half hour, we extended that interview, his experience with Agent Orange and what that's meant to him and his family. And ultimately, and I think this is true for several of the interviews there, this was as much a gift to the family as anything else. For Bob's case, I know it was. And if you have an opportunity, and just if you have an opportunity, yes, do contact the Media Center. And I volunteer there too as one of their interviewers. It's absolutely a worthwhile enterprise. Okay, let me move on then to Gary.
Thank you, Bill. Bill, did you leave your glasses up here? No. Oh, well, maybe I can use them. Yes, good morning and welcome home, all of us veterans. My name is Gary Saylor. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I served in the United States Army, 69 to 71. I'm here today to tell you about some of my experiences as a hospice volunteer in the We Honor Veterans program. I'm going on 4 years as a volunteer. And again, I'm going to repeat some things that Susan said. The program's designed for all the branches of service and honors all who served. For some veterans, this is their first time they have been properly thanked for their service. For others, it may be a sense of closure and ease their final journey. While no words will ever be fully worthy of their service, nor any honor truly befitting their sacrifice, let us remember that it is never too late to pay tribute to the men and women who answered the call to duty. As Bill said, we give them a certificate. Usually when we walk into the Dove House to their room or we visit them at home, we present them with an American flag and our certificate. And I'll read what our certificate says. Carroll Hospice, we appreciate our veterans, John Doe, United States Marine Corps. We pay special tribute to you for your service and military service to America and for advancing the universal hope of freedom and liberty for all. A lot of times during the presentation, family are taking pictures. Some of them have videoed it. They're truly grateful and they thank us. I guess my first experience with hospice was with my mother-in-law, and she liked me best. She passed away during a blizzard. It was also Super Bowl Sunday. The year was January 30th, 2000. I'll never forget the hospice nurse who came out to be with us. She came from Carroll County. She came through a blizzard. She walked almost a half a mile back to Cindy's mom and dad's house. She couldn't get to us. Her vehicle had gotten stuck. It really touched me to know that somebody would do that. And I thought then, back in 2000, wow, I wish I could do something like that. Well, just 4 years ago at our VFW meeting, Jill Engler and Bill Palm came to the meeting. They were looking for veterans to volunteer at hospice in the We Honor Veterans program. They left their card on the table in case somebody wanted to call. And that night I said, no, I can't do that. I'm too busy. But I believe God intervened and told me to pick up that card and call them. And here I am today. I want to tell you about Harry and Nancy. Harry was a Korean War veteran, Navy. When I would go sit with Harry while Nancy went out to get away from Harry, get her nails done, her hair done, Harry couldn't wait till I got there. Nancy was ready to leave as soon as I got there. I think I fast forwarded to today, and I saw Cindy and I in the near future, hopefully not. And I hope somebody will come sit with me while Cindy gets away from me for a while. She'll have her hands full. And the last veteran I sat with was Forrest. He was a Vietnam veteran. Forrest passed away this past week, 72 years young. I went with his wife, Marie, down to Garrison Forest for his service. Harry served in Vietnam. We were both stationed up in Pleiku, up in the highlands. So we hit it off pretty good right then. And Marie, what we really need to concentrate on too, we honor the veterans, but we need to remember to take care of their wives. Some of them, it's their granddaughters. A grandson has taken them in to care for them. We need to remember to take care of the caregivers. And the highest ranking veteran I ever did a presentation to was a colonel up in Tawnytown. Well, I get to Tawnytown after I stopped at Sheets. And I went into the home, and his daughter met me, and she said, Dad hasn't been responsive for a day or two. So I did my presentation, and as we noted earlier, we always try to give them the good old salute. Well, the colonel, out of his hand, his eyes opened, and he gave me a good old military salute. And it's very rewarding. And it's okay to say no. I hate to say no to Kim, but it's okay to say no. And we're looking for volunteers. And a lot of you in this room, sitting at the table I'm at, are caring for their fathers right now. And many of you are caring for someone, that's a loved one. And anyway, I've said enough. Let me find my notes. I would like to leave you with one other thing. I heard this in church a couple Sundays ago. This is a quotation from John Wesley. Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. Thank you so much. Oh, Tom? I'm supposed to introduce Tom. And before you start, I'd like to really thank my wife. She has my back. And I do have one more story about a Marine. He was under hospice care. Can you hear me back there? Yeah. He wanted a Marine to do his presentation. Well, our Marine at hospice had the sniffles. And we have each other's back in our program, right, Tom? Mm-hmm. So I went to the Marine's home, and he said, "You're Army? Where's my Marine?" Well, he was stuck with me, and I did the presentation, and as I left, he told me I did a good job.
Bill, I didn't know we had this in common. As many times as we've talked, I was in the military from 69 to 71. The Army, in its wisdom, found reason to send me to Korea as a peacekeeper. So I didn't have the same experience you had, but I was in the uniform. I remember one time, well, we were supposed to get married several months later than we actually did, but I got my draft notice. We speeded everything up and got married. And I went to Korea, and I was there for a couple of months before my mail caught up to me. Now, my wife has a different version of this, but I'm the one speaking. My mail caught up to me, and that was the first I realized that I had left her pregnant. And that was a 13-month deployment. So several months after that, I wanted to get home, and I think I only had about 10 days of leave coming, but I worked for a good old sergeant. And he read my request, and he said, "No, this will never do. You've got to ask for more time." I said, "I don't have more time." He said, "Let me write this up for you." And he wrote it up for him, and the Army gave me 3 weeks of leave. And I got to the day I was supposed to leave, and I went to see him, and he said, "Take these 13 gallons of paint to this Air Force sergeant over at the Air Force Base, and he's going to get you on the first plane out." And that's how I got on the first plane out. But there had been some turbulence, and Japan had been socked in. That was the first place I landed, and that was where I was on my own. I walked into an aircraft hangar, and there were all these GIs sitting on their baggage waiting for flights out, and I thought, "Oh, I'm never going to get home." But I walked up to the counter where you're supposed to hand in your paperwork, and just as I walked up to the counter, all the boards came alive. And I got on the first flight out of Japan, and I got on a C-141. If you don't know what that is, that's the biggest cargo plane they make in the Air Force. Got in a C-141 that was going to go to Japan, all the way to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. So I was feeling good. I was in a peacekeeper in Korea. I was going home to see my wife and experience the birth of our first child. And the dozen of us or so got on that C-141. And we sat with our backs towards the back of the plane, and all the cargo was in the middle, and the plane was full of coffins from Vietnam that were headed back to their families on the East Coast. And you realize just how lucky you were. And I think I'm fortunate now to be in hospice and be able to help some of those who are looking at the most difficult times of their lives. Very recently, you've been told that they put flag holders up in Dove House next to all of the patient rooms. And if you're a veteran, they put the flag that represents your service up in that flag holder, a square-foot flag of Army, Navy, Marines. And I noticed recently after I had been there that the rooms are starting to take on decorations now that reflect the veterans. I was in a veterans room just recently, and there were some very intricate models of tanks. Evidently, he was in the armory, in the armored division. And since those, one of the times I went to present a certificate to a veteran, and we're there to we try to make it convenient for the families to be there when we receive the certificate, and they realize it's important, and many times they bring other family members in. Usually, it's amazing to me how infrequently family members know about what happened to veterans when they were in the service. There are a lot of veterans, especially the older veterans, who don't talk about their time in the service. So when I first go in the room, I try to establish a rapport with them, and when they realize you're a veteran, they start opening up a little bit. And sometimes even some of the veterans who you thought were sound asleep or not responsive anymore start to respond to you because they're talking to another veteran. And we encourage people to bring their families together for that. And when it comes time to present the certificates, I ask if there's any other veterans in the room, family members, relatives. And a couple of times those folks have been in the room. So when I do a certificate presentation, I'll stand up in front of the veteran at attention, invite the other veterans to stand with me, and I'll read that certificate that you've already seen this morning. And then offer them a salute and ask the other veterans with me in the room to salute as well. And we'll hold that salute as long as necessary until that veteran can manage to get his hand up and return the salute. And usually when I turn around, there's not a dry eye in the room after that. And that gives you a time to start talking with the veteran and swapping veteran stories and having other people let down and share their stories as well. Hospice is a lot of people don't understand how you can do hospice work and be with people at that time in their lives, but it's really a privilege to be with people at that time in their lives, for them to let you in and for you to do whatever you can for them, whether that's at home or in hospice or in the hospital. There's a great balance of understanding, even if you come from different areas of life and have walked a different route since you've left the uniform behind. So hospice has been a gift for me to be able to do in people's lives at that time, and I'm very grateful for it. And I want to invite you to welcome the Marine in our midst, Allison, who's also a hospice volunteer.
Good morning. My name is Allison. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, 76 to 80. And the mother of Marine Staff Sergeant Jimmy Malachowski, who was killed by hostile forces in Afghanistan. I am also, obviously, a Carroll Hospice volunteer. Also, I'm not a public speaker, so yes, I have this. And I timed it. That's like 4.5 minutes, so we're good to go. Okay. At first, when I told friends that I was working with veterans in hospice care, the reaction was, oh my God, how terribly sad and depressing. Why are you doing this to yourself? There was, and still to this day, there is no support from my friends for me doing this at all, because they don't understand. But being a veteran hospice volunteer means being there for a brother and sister at the end of their life. Some people think that our military service doesn't mean anything to us as the years pass. However, this short story I will share tells otherwise. I got a text from Kim late one evening saying a war veteran was close to the end of his life and would I go to him and present the We Honor Veterans certificate. I arrived at his home around 10 p.m. with his family anxiously waiting for me. I noticed that there was interesting memorabilia of his service, all proudly displayed around his living room. However, this father, husband, and war veteran was unresponsive for the last 24 hours, so I would not be hearing fascinating stories about his experience in the war, his times in the military, or his life afterwards. His eyes were closed, his head was turned to the side, and his breathing was shallow. But I introduced myself to him anyway as a fellow veteran and told him, as I was gently laying a little flag like this one, as you've seen it several times today, over his heart, "Our nation's colors you so proudly served," I said. He stirred ever so slightly at those words and the touch of the flag. As my presentation concluded, I raised my hand, saluted, and told him a grateful nation thanked him for keeping us all safe. Suddenly, he began to raise a trembling hand, struggling to return my salute. His family was astonished. They whispered, "How did he know to salute? He couldn't even see her. Could he even hear anything anymore?" After my presentation, his family spoke of their distress as to why he wasn't letting go. They had all told him they would be fine and it was okay for him to leave. Was something holding him back, they asked me. I thought for a moment, then I reached down and touched his hand. "Brother, your platoon is forming on the other side, and your brothers are waiting for you. I got your back over here on this side." The next day I received a text from Kim saying he had passed away within an hour of my leaving. You know, after we serve our country, especially those of you who have experienced war, we learn to distract ourselves from those experiences, pushing them aside as we live out our daily lives. Then in the end, years later, only to realize that those experiences never really went away. The sense of duty, honor, and commitment don't end with separation from active or reserve service. It becomes intrinsic, a part of who we are, and touches all aspects of our lives. So in closing, I say to my brothers and sisters here today, your service to our country will never be forgotten. No veteran left behind. We still got each other's backs. Thank you.
It's so hard to follow these guys. And I want to apologize for going over today. We overscheduled, but I hope it's worth your investment of time, and it certainly is worth mine. Thank you all, our volunteers, and thank you for your service, and Allison, thank you for your loss. I apologize for your loss, and we pray for you, and thank you for sharing what you do on behalf of your son, and know he's with us today. Very proud of his mother and what she has done on his behalf. I'd like at this time to invite Bill Murphy up. This is in addition to the schedule. He has a special presentation for us today. Bill is one of our biggest advocates for veterans in this county, and I give him a big hand, and you can see he's dressed for the occasion.
Thank you very much, Susan. Good morning. I'm Bill Murphy. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Friends of Disabled American Veterans in Carroll County. Briefly, I'd just like to make a presentation to one of our spouses of a World War II, a Vietnam veteran who recently passed away, Charlie Miller. So at this time, I'd like to ask Janine Miller to come up with Sonia, if you would escort her up, please. And I'd like to present Janine. This is from Hugs and Stitches, and that's a group with Sandy Schneider. They've been doing this for over 17 years, and I thought it was appropriate. Charlie Miller was in hospice before he died, and this past year we're working with over 5 veterans that passed away, and they were all in hospice. The excellent care that they give is just unbelievable, and I'm just proud to be part. By the way, Charlie Miller was our first person that we had as far as a patient with Friends of Disabled American Veterans. And he is a wonderful person. And Janine, I'd like to just say the work that she did with the caregivers, she took care of Charlie for 6.5 years after his stroke that he had. And thank you for all your good service, and we honor Charlie Miller and all the other veterans that recently died in this year and in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for reminding us and doing this today. And I want to notice, I was looking at the agenda and listening to our speakers, and they're all Army. And I don't know if that's because that's what our speakers saw. I'm so glad that we had Air Force represented. And Marine. Yeah, I was going to say Army and Marine. Army and Marine, but we have now Air Force. So some of you guys got to step up next year, and we got to be part of this program and balance this out a little bit. As you can tell, Carroll Hospice is just a very, very special place with very, very special people, both our staff and our volunteers, our families and our patients. I mean, that's why I'm involved with this, because it's just so special. But we invited you to here today to thank you for your service. We're not here to ask you for anything else. But obviously many of you are involved with hospice or have had reason to be in hospice. And people have asked me, what can you do to help? And you've just heard about maybe offering your service. Another thing you can do is just simply spreading the word about hospice and hospice services. To some people, hospice is a bad word. It means death, and that's, to me, is not true at all. All of us have a beginning and an end, as was just mentioned. And we just want your end to be as peaceful and quiet and personal to you and your family as you want it. Who wants to be hooked to tubes in a hospital? You'd rather be there with loved ones surrounding you, knowing you're loved with people, your community, and that's what we aim to do, pain-free or comfort with comfort. So that is what hospice is all about. So spreading the word about a quality end of life and how to do it, and that it's available here in Carroll County, and we've got a wonderful program. So being our advocate is a big deal. Volunteer your time. There's many, many different opportunities. And but one of the things we at Carroll Hospice, we've almost become a victim of our own success. We've expanded. We've got we're trying to reach so many people in our community, make sure they know what we have. So we opened our doors to our inpatient facility. You can get care at home, and then there's our inpatient facility, which is Dove House, right across the street. For those of you who don't know where it is, I was just looking, and I found an invitation from years ago for the grand opening of the Dove House, January 4th, 2007. It's still in my inbox. I haven't cleaned it out. So 12 years ago, we actually officially had the ribbon cutting for the Dove House. And it was built through the generosity of this community. That's what paid for the Dove House. So we've seen a need for expansion. We've expanded our services into Pennsylvania. Many of our folks come to the Carroll Hospital from Pennsylvania or move to Pennsylvania. So we now service Pennsylvania. We service Frederick County. We service Baltimore County. We're going to move into Baltimore City because we have the affiliation now with LifeBridge. So we've grown in the number of people we're serving both at home and coming to the Dove House. So we need some additional beds at Dove House. So we never want to say there's no room at the inn. We want to always make sure there's space for folks. We currently have 8 beds over there at Dove House. We have a capital project on the books that we're ready to move forward with. We're going to expand from 8 to 14 beds. We're going to actually build into an unfinished space that they planned for when they built the Dove House. So the space is already there. We just have to get it finished on the second floor. We're going to improve, we're going to give it a little facelift, improve the entrance and nurses' stations. And as I said, many of you have been generous supporters for many years, and we appreciate it. There's 2 things people don't realize. One, we have the capital piece for the Dove House, but we also these programs that we offer, whether it's a veterans program, bereavement program, Camp TR, which is for children, youth have lost their parents, their grandparents, pets. We have something for pet bereavement, music therapy. All of these programs are funded through 100% through ongoing philanthropy of our community. It is not paid for through the hospice benefit, through your insurance or through Medicare. So keep that in mind. That's what makes us so different and so unique from other hospice programs throughout the country. But we're beginning our capital campaign for the Dove House expansion. Our goal is $3.5 million to do all the things we want to do. We've already raised $2 million thanks to a very generous donation from the Callert Foundation. And Greg Callert is usually here for breakfast. He was not able to make it. He's a huge supporter. The Callert Cancer Center is right next door. He's a huge supporter of the hospital and hospice. We also had a very generous contribution from the state of Maryland, or as I say, from the taxpayers of the state of Maryland, as Governor Hogan recognized the importance of our project and hospice. So that really helped our campaign. But we still have $1.5 million to complete our capital campaign, and we're ready to go out to bid. It's planned, ready to go. Our start date is June of 2020 to get those extra beds in place. And many of you have asked for opportunities. There are opportunities to just give generally to our capital fund, or there's going to be some specific gift items that you can say, yes, I want to pay for this room, or I want to pay for this particular thing. So those opportunities will be available. You can talk to Ellen Myers or someone on our staff. We will put names on the giving wall for a $10,000 gift. That will be there forever. If you have any interest in finding out more about how to be involved with our campaign, please see Ellen. If you want to be involved in the volunteer program, you don't have to be a veteran. We keep talking about veteran volunteers. You do not have to be a veteran. We have a whole other group of people that are non-veterans who are volunteers and see our other patients as well. So please reach out to someone that's here on staff, and they will give you more information. But I want to thank you all for your service, and thank you for joining us here at the Veterans Breakfast. And please, I hope to see you next year, and bring a friend. And I just want to stop. We started off with talking about a common man, and I wanted to say there is no such thing as just a common soldier. In my book, each and every one of you is a special gift from God. And I thank you.